Welcome into Up in the Rafters, a podcast brought to you by Inside Carolina this college basketball season. I'm Taylor Vippolis hosting this, and as always, joining me, he's a national champion, the Final Four's most outstanding player, Carolina basketball legend Joel Berry. Joel, I'm a little hurt from the results of these games, but it's always great to see you. So as much as these games can get me down, you have the ability to kind of pick my morale back up. So I want to start by saying that.
Well, I appreciate that, man. It's good. It's good seeing you as well. I wish we could approach these with a little bit more juice, if you will, but we're gonna bring the energy regardless. And we're gonna talk about what we see. But always a pleasure being here.
Yeah, the two people you don't have to worry about when it comes to energy, it's us, I think.
100%, man. And we keep it real on here. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to do. We want to keep the energy and keep it real.
Yeah, and a shout out to the CW broadcast during the Boston College game. They gave a shout out to you on this podcast and referencing what we talk about on this podcast. So appreciate that. Appreciate everybody that listens. But Joel, that Boston College game, if Boston College could inbound the ball, we're talking about a Carolina loss where Boston College had an 83% win probability, up by 4 with 26 seconds left. Carolina squeaks by. They go to overtime. They win that game. Then they travel to Pitt. They lose there 73-65. Pitt closes the game on a 14-2 run. What would you say your takeaways are from the basketball that you've seen over the past week from the Tar Heels?
Yeah, in particular, the Boston College game, you had a team in Boston College that looked like one of the worst offenses in the country against Virginia earlier in the week, and then they walked into the Smith Center, and I don't know what it was, man, but they lit it up. Donald Hand Jr., I don't think hit the rim until like overtime. I mean, my man was cashing everything. The defense kind of is worrisome just because of the small lineups that we have to throw out there. And when you're throwing out small lineups, there are a lot of things that just, it's like a trickle down effect. You know, teams see the paint wide open, they get to the rim, they finish without feeling any resistance. The rebounding, all of that just becomes harder. And it's difficult. And then in the Pitt game, it's like, I will give hats off. They played well defensively, but what bothered me was the offensive end. I thought they looked great in the first half until RJ made those 2 turnovers. And then it went downhill from there. Second half, it was like they were at Rucker Park just playing one-on-one basketball. And that's just not a recipe to win.
Yeah, I think what the Boston College game and the Pitt game showed me is it feels like everybody has kind of been waiting for this team to flip a switch. And sometimes I think you have to kind of admit there might not be a switch. There's been enough data this season to suggest that this is just who this Carolina basketball team is, a team that is going to struggle closing out games, a team that is barely squeaking by against some of the bottom ACC teams, and then a team that's really going to struggle when they go on the road and they get into some uncomfortable situations when you'd expect leaders to step up. And I think that's the most disheartening thing for this Carolina team is that you're looking at them early in the season, and you know they have this. They storm back against Kansas in Kansas, and you're like, okay, like you could write that loss off. Maybe this team will learn from it. And
early in the season,
every loss for this Carolina team, it feels like there's been like a checklist. Like, did this happen? Did this happen? Did this happen? And every loss, it's like, yes, yes, yes. If this Carolina team's losing, it's most likely going to be the same formula every time. And you talked about the late game execution on the offensive end. In Pitt, at Pitt, Carolina goes on a scoring drought the last 3:21. They missed their last 7 shots. They missed 10 of their last 11 shots. I think you had the number with about 8.5 minutes left. Carolina scored their 61st point. They scored 4 points for over 8 minutes to close out the game.
Yeah.
How do you how would you describe what Carolina is trying to do offensively, and where's the disconnect? Because you mentioned the Rucker Park one-on-one, because it does feel like, if you didn't know any better, this Carolina team is just dribbling the air out of the ball while everybody else watches.
Yeah, and that's where the frustration is, because when you're playing against a set defense and you just sit out there in ISO and just dribble the crap out of the ball, next thing you know, that's where the turnovers come. And then all of a sudden they're playing in crowds, and then the team is going the other way. There needs to be movement before they start their initial attack. But what's happening is that they're getting to, and they do, it's not saying that they don't have any movement, but eventually when they lose that third or fourth option, which is they're getting to quite a bit. And I'll tell you the reason why, but next thing you know, you got RJ or Captain Jack or Elliott trying to go one-on-one, and the guards are doing a great job staying in front of them defensively, and then it turns into a turnover. And then what is happening is that they're getting to these actions, and it just seems like the personnel becomes a problem. Because I look sometimes early in the possession, and somebody will get a touch paint, and there'll be somebody on the perimeter wide open for a 3-point shot, but the 3-point shooting just isn't there. You look at the first half, they knocked down 6 threes, and you're looking at the offense like, oh, it's about to be a good night. I mean, they went up by 10 points. When's the last time Carolina had that type of separation?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, here come the turnovers. And next thing you know, it goes into halftime with 2-point game. So you get to the second half and they only go 1 for 11 from the 3-point line. That's why I say it's a personnel problem, because you can only attack the paint so many times before teams realize, all right, I'm short closing you. Go ahead and drive to the lane. We know you guys turn over the ball. We'll just go the other way. And that's the case in what's going on right now.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 different types of turnovers, and which one you commit makes a pretty big difference. There's one where I try to pass it to you, the ball goes out of bounds. Okay, we could go back and kind of reset our defense and talk it out. And then there's the one that Carolina was doing against Pitt, where it's pick sixes out there.
It's the live ball turnovers every time. Those are the 2. Those, I want to say, 3 plays killed them in that Pitt game. The 2 turnovers by RJ, and then you go up by 1, and then Elliott Cadeau trying to squeeze the ball into Vin Allen Lupin. That in a nutshell is where they're having the problem. It's almost like this feeling of it's too good to be true, because then it feels like it's coming at some point. And that's the problem. Those 3 plays right there killed them.
Yeah, and Carolina commits 14 turnovers in this game. Pitt scores 22 points off those 14 turnovers, and that's going to be a recipe to lose almost every time. And going back to the late game struggles for this team offensively, it feels like there's also a split between what the coaches are saying and then what we're seeing on the court. Because if you watch Hubert Davis in the post-game press conference, he talks about he wants his team to play with that 0.5 mentality. You catch the ball, you shoot it, you pass it, you drive it, making quick decisions. He even mentioned specifically they never talk about holding it or over dribbling. So then when we're watching these games to close it out, and it's RJ or Ian Jackson or Elliott Cadeau dribbling for 20 plus seconds in the shot clock, it does kind of feel like, wait, the coaches seem like they're telling them something, but what we're seeing on the court is something completely different. And the result is a pretty inefficient offense.
And it's a tough situation because the coach's job is just to put you in a position to make a play or take advantage of an opportunity or an advantage. However, it's up to the players to make these decisions. They're out on the court. And, the thing that sucks, I know some people will say, well, put them on the bench. Who are you going to put in? And it's like you can't, it's hard to teach that way because there's no one else on the bench that you can put in to make up for what Elliott does. There's no one on the bench to make up for what RJ is doing or Seth. It's just, it's hard. And yeah, that disconnect seems to be there. If you have Coach Davis coming saying one thing and then the players, we're looking at it. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to see that they're catching the ball and taking 5 or 6 dribbles just to make a move. And then when they make a move, they turn over the ball. So that's where I'm starting to question, is this a coaching thing? I don't think so. I think this is the players taking the initiative to just seem to just do whatever they want to do without understanding what's going on. And maybe that's a result of you get a little comfortable when you know you don't have anyone playing behind you.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, just as a basketball player, you get comfortable with that. So it's just, well, can I go out here and just do what I want to do? Because I know we can't put anyone else in.
Yeah. And when I talk to people that, are in the NBA or know what offenses are trying to do or what Carolina is trying to do schematically, most of them would agree that what Carolina is trying to do should theoretically be working. So I guess where the coaching staff kind of gets the blame is, one, how did you let the roster construction get to this point where it feels like there's a bunch of pieces on this team that don't really fit? And when you are trying to get a point across, why is your team having such a hard time grasping what you're trying to do and where that breakdown is coming from that has resulted in Carolina now being 1-8 in quad one games, and to the point where your tournament hopes are basically on life support. You're either looking at having to sweep Duke and win out this season, or the NC State route from last season where you have to go into the ACC tournament and win the whole thing to punch your ticket. So yeah, I think circling back to that roster construction, it feels like everybody can kind of agree it comes down to three separate personnel issues, where one, Carolina doesn't replace the leadership from Harrison Ingram and Cormac Ryan. Two is Carolina doesn't seem like they have an ACC starting caliber center to replace Armando Bacot. And then three, you could talk about what Carolina didn't get. What they did get was Cade Tyson, who was highly regarded in the transfer portal, one of the top players in the transfer portal, a 46% three-point shooter last season at Belmont, who you bring him to Chapel Hill, and for the most part, he's largely been unplayable for this Carolina coaching staff. So if you look at all three of those problems, and if I tell you, hey, magic fix one of these problems you can fix, which one would you choose that you think would give this team the best chance for success?
I think honestly it's the shooting. To me, it's the shooting. The reason why, and to your point, that's a great point about getting information from people looking at their offense and what they're running to see if it's a successful offense to run. And it is. And that's why I said I agree. I'm looking at guys coming off of screens. If you look at the backside, there's a lot of action going on to where their guards are able to get in when it's off of the first or second look. and they're able to get somebody on the backside wide open. But when you go into the lane and all of a sudden you kick out to a Seth Trimble, the defense like, I'm not closing out. And so that's why I think shooting is the number one problem for this team. And you look at the trickle down effect. Cade Tyson can't play. Now you have, he could play the four. He could play the four position and be that stretch four for your team. But now that doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden now you have Drake Powell who's playing out of position. And then a lot of guys are trying to do other things that they're just not built to do. And I just think that shooting would solve all of these problems, because you can only get to about the third action, unless you're a Virginia, you get to about the third action. And by that time, that ball either needs to be laid up at the rim or it needs to be shot from the perimeter. But their third actions can't finish at the rim because they have people just hanging out in the paint. There's no defensive 3 seconds in college.
Yeah,
shooting would solve all of that.
Yeah, the floor spacers that Carolina has seen in recent years is what this team is drastically missing, and what this team thought they were getting with somebody like Cade Tyson. You just have to look back a couple of years to what Brady Manick did when Carolina went from playing Dawson Garcia to Brady Manick, and how quickly Carolina went from a bubble team to, oh wait, this team has just as good as any chance to win a national championship when you have guys that can attack the basket like RJ Davis, like Caleb Love, and just putting somebody like him in the lineup. When you go back a couple of years further, putting somebody like Cam Johnson in the lineup. When you go back to your title team, Justin Jackson, the way he was able to shoot and kind of space the floor out. So it does feel like when you're looking at this team, what they're really good at, it's somebody like Elliot Cadeau playing in space, playing with an open floor, RJ Davis getting downhill, but you can't really get downhill when there's 5 guys in the paint waiting for you.
No, not at all. I mean, you just look, you just said it well. Look at all the teams that have had success at Carolina. It's always, not saying that every guy has to shoot, but you have to have guys that are respectable from the perimeter, because teams will just sag in the paint and allow you to come in. And maybe if you have guys that are 6'7", like a Dude Thero from Arkansas or somebody with that type of athleticism, yeah, maybe you can say, hey, he can't shoot, but we also got to make sure we're contesting him at the rim because he can finish. We're asking guys that are 6 feet to finish over guys that are 6'10" and just as athletic. I mean, look, Zach Alston had a block party the other night.
Yeah.
Like, that's the problem. It's not the fact that, they can get to the rim, but eventually the statistics will tell you common sense will tell you a guy that's 6'10" is going to have an advantage over a 6-foot guy each and every day.
Yeah. Quick break so I can remind everybody about our friends over at Johnny T-Shirt. If you're going to be in Chapel Hill, you could visit them on Franklin Street. And if not, no worries. You can go online to johnnytshirt.com. They have everything the Carolina fan could possibly want. The hats, the T-shirts, the jerseys, you name it. They've got it. I'm on their website right now. They always have new items. They have the Chapel Bill sleeve hoodies with Bill Belichick fever sweeping the nation right now. And they also have, just in time, the rivalry gear for this upcoming Duke game. A ton of stuff. They're always running great sales. It's great prices, great people, great customer service. And don't forget, Inside Carolina premium subscribers save 10% off their orders. Joel, before we get to the fan submitted questions, when I was watching Hubert Davis in his post-game press conference against Pitt, he mentioned that he doesn't really believe in the Super Bowl mentality, like one game in the regular season has more importance than the other. in theory, that is easy to say. But when you're in the locker room, what is it like knowing when that calendar turns to Duke UNC and you go from, okay, I'm on the road at Pitt, this is just another game, to now, okay, I know everybody in the nation is getting ready to watch Carolina Duke.
Yeah, I mean, they're going into a hostile environment. That place is going to be rocking. I will say, I know it doesn't happen often, but I know Coach will say, we'll go back and change that statement because if my memory serves me correct, winning at Duke propelled them to go to the national championship. I'm just saying, one game can change. It can change a lot now when you have the Super Bowl mentality for one game. Changed a lot for them that year. So, no, it's going to be a hostile environment. Look, I mean, it's another game, and I know it's cliche, but it is another game. And the reason why I approach it that way, back in 2016 when we had our regular season championship on the line, Duke was in the way of that, and the only reason why we got it was because we were able to win that game. So it's still a conference game, but the emotions are going to be high. It's already hard to win on the road, let alone in a rivalry game. And so it'll be interesting to see how they can bounce back. I will say that's you want to win that Pitt game, but now you got some fire up under you to go into this game and get it done just because you want to beat the dudes down the road.
Yeah, and Carolina comes into this one struggling, and I think a lot of people might look at it and see that this Duke team probably sees blood in the water with this Carolina team limping their way into Durham. But to add to the cliches, this has always been a game where you could kind of throw out the records when these two teams play because it feels like it always goes down to the wire, and whatever you think is going to happen in a game doesn't necessarily happen, or expect the unexpected. I'm just going to keep throwing cliches at you. Expect the unexpected.
I'm curious to see if there's ever been a team that came into this game undefeated, and I would be curious to know that. But yeah, this is going to be to your point. They probably do smell blood in the water.
Yeah.
And I just think Carolina, regardless, this is a bigger game for them than it is for Duke, because they need those quad one wins to be able to pad that resume a little bit, because that's been a problem. Like, that's the thing. They don't have any bad losses. It's just they don't have any good wins.
Yeah.
So this is a big game for them.
Can you put us in Cameron Indoor? Like, what can players expect when they take the court there, and the emotions that are going through you when you do step on that floor?
I think, as you know, because of where you are right now, it's like going from an apartment that's about 69 degrees, and you step outside of that Florida weather and that humidity hits you. That's what it feels like stepping in the Cameron. You go from that locker room. First off, you're hearing like all the stuff that's going on.
Uh-huh.
And then you walk in. As soon as you hit that door from the locker room to the court, it's like a wave of humidity just hits you. And from the time that you leave that door to get on the court, you're already mid-sweat. It's wild. It's wild. It brings everyone knows, like, everybody that play basketball. That's why I love for people to go into Cameron, because it's so relatable. Everyone has played in a high school gym, and you realize how just sweaty and hot that's what it is walking in there. And then you add on the noise with it. It'll mentally mess with you.
Yeah. All right, let's take a quick break so I can remind everybody about our friends over at Congruity. Congruity is the leading provider for Tar Heel business owners, payroll, HR, and employee benefit needs. Inside Carolina listeners can get a free payroll and HR assessment by emailing Matt at Congruity. Email is matt@congruityhr.com. That email again is matt@congruityhr.com. congruityhr.com. All right, let's get back to the episode. Getting to the fan submitted questions. Thank you to everybody that submitted questions. Every day that we record this podcast, we throw it up on Instagram, ask the audience to get their thoughts out and get any questions that they want answered. We try to get to the best ones, but just again, appreciate everybody that sends in a question. The first question is from Dylan Rosie, and he said, "Who can lead this team and help us win these games when we're up late?"
That's a great question. I do think it's the players knowing time and score and knowing when to push and when to put on the brake a little bit. And that's just, I mean, they just have to have it at this point of the season. Like, the coaches can only do so much. Your players have to be able to understand time and score. And I guarantee you, Coach Davis and his staff, they're working in practice on situations like that. Like, we always worked on situations where we're up 10 and where we're down 10, because it's easy just to let off the pedal when you're up, and then it's difficult, and you have to be very efficient when you're coming back to make up for that deficit. You look at, like, I'm questioning, and I'm going to RJ, and I'm looking at him and saying, hey, when you make that first turnover and we're up by 10, when we come down the next time, we need you to know that let's run some offense and get a good shot. Or when Elliott gets that ball, instead of him pressing like we love the pass ahead passes, but when you're up 1 in a close game and it's on the road, you have to slow down and let's run some offense. That's on the players. Coaches can't do anything about that.
Yeah, and I think when you're watching Cadeau in that situation late in the second half, you can for sure understand his thinking when he's trying to make that pass and
correct
playing, but again, kind of knowing score and situation. Van Allen Lubin, no offense to Van Allen Lubin, but not the best hands in the country.
And it's trying to fit it into a tight window when a guy is on the move.
Yeah.
And let alone a 6'9" guy trying to reach down.
Yeah. And when you're talking about some of these late game failures for this North Carolina team, from like a competitor standpoint, it would almost be better if this Carolina team was just getting blown out. But I think the added level of frustration from the Carolina fan, from the Carolina alumni, from the Carolina lettermen that have played for this team, the frustration comes from, hey, we're in this game. Not only are we in this game, but we're up late in this game. And for some reason, what has plagued this team is the ability to get over the hump and not be able to finish games and not be able to retain, like, hey, this is why we lost this last game.
Yeah.
Let me not do that in this next game, because it's just like, hey guys, it's the same mistakes. We're losing for the same reason.
No, that's a great point. And that's when you say it can't be the coaches, it's the players. They're the ones out there making those plays. They have to remember that, and they have to be able to learn from those lessons. I mean, look at all the close games. We could be talking about a different season right now if some of those lessons were learned in those earlier games to get over that hump, to be able to make those plays and be able to finish out with a W.
Every time I put the poll up, or not the poll, but the ask a question on Instagram, there's normally 2 or 3 questions that when I'm scrolling through like the hundreds of responses, like, okay, this question keeps popping up. This question keeps popping up. Okay, I just saw this question for the 4th time. This week, the version of this question was this one. I'll give the credit to Hudson Wolk 8. How is Carolina going to stop Cooper Flagg, who comes into this game averaging 28 and 4 for this Duke team? I think we got that question maybe 65 times.
I mean, rightfully so. That dude he's a basketball player. He just impacts the game in so many ways. I thought NC State and Dontre Styles did a great job on Cooper Flagg. Being able to get up into him, allowing him to get comfortable, just making it difficult for him. Like, he does a really good job of stretching out at the basket. I think if you can stay in front of the basket or stay in between the basket rather, and him, you can force him into some difficult shots. But this is a team that is opposite of what our team is, in that they can shoot the crap out of the ball. And so all of a sudden the court is so spaced where Cooper Flagg can just operate and read and react. And it's difficult. So I think Drake Powell is one of those guys that can guard him and get up under him. That way, if he against big guys, he's able to do that off arm and kind of like use them as leverage to be able to get to the basket. But with Drake Powell being a little shorter than him, maybe that presents a challenge when a guy is up under you and you're dribbling the ball right into his airspace. That makes it a little bit more difficult. But I think you have to do your work early and just make his catches tough, and maybe keep a body on him, check him a little bit, and let them know that you're there and make some of those catches a little bit tough.
Yeah, and for all the people that asked, how do you stop Cooper Flagg?
There's no stopping.
I was just going to say, he's not someone you stop. He's someone that you can only hope you can contain and limit him. The only way Carolina stops somebody like Cooper Flagg is if you get a repeat of that 2019 UNC Duke game and his flag or his shoe explodes the first play of the game.
That's about the only thing that can stop him. Otherwise, you're just trying to do your best to contain and limit.
I feel like, going back to that game, I feel like we almost didn't talk enough about that Zion's shoe just exploded.
Yeah, I mean, I had never seen anything like that.
He had so much force that his foot just ripped out of the shoe.
Either the force was the problem, or those Tower Boys did a heck of a job of wiping up that spot, and whatever wax they put on that floor,
he stuck to it.
He stuck
like
to it
like a fly.
Like stick 'em. Goodness gracious.
The final question comes from Aiden Walker, 22. For Carolina to pull off the upset and win this game, what would you say the keys to the game are?
Well, I just truly believe you have to hit perimeter shots against them. In whatever way you can, because the paint is crowded against this team, and they do, like, that's my number one worry for this, Taylor, is in this game is Duke's gap integrity. Them being in help side is so elite that they don't give you any type of driving room. And so there are two things you have to do. You got to make perimeter shots, but you also have to move the crap out of the ball and keep it moving, and not allow them to set their defense. I thought that's what NC State did as well, along with hitting shots from the perimeter. They kept Duke on the move, and it's really hard to do that because you got to do that for an entire game. But perimeter shooting just opens them up, and now you're able to drive, because you got a 7'2" Malawach in there, and you got a 6'9" Cooper Flagg. And I describe it like this: if you don't go in there with your big boy britches, you will be going outside of Cameron picking up the ball. They will smack it into this parking lot. So they have to go in there and play under control, play off of 2 feet, and use their teammates and be able to knock down some perimeter shots.
No need for me to tell people when this next game is, but I'm still going to do it anyways. It's Saturday. It's a 6:30 tip on ESPN from Cameron Indoor for Carolina. It doesn't get much bigger than this. One of the best rivalries in not just college basketball, but really all of sports for what happens whenever these two teams play. But Joel, man, appreciate the time as always, and appreciate everybody watching and listening.
Yes, sir. Go Heels.